PR at Disney Interactive. I think you guys met my counterparts on the shuttle, Tamara and Mary. And so we want to thank you all for coming out here to Orlando to meet with us all today and have a look at our Power of Illusion 3DS title. So with that being said, I would like to introduce to you all Warren Spector.
Yeah, thanks for coming. We're here to talk about Disney Mickey Power of Illusion on Nintendo 3DS. I am Warren Spector, the founder and creative director at Junction on the Disney Mickey games. We're also going to be joined a little while by Peter Long, who is creative director of DreamRift and was the project director on the game we're talking about today. When we worked on the first Mickey game, while we were working on that, at E3, Nintendo showed the 3DS for the first time. And I was completely blown away by that device. At the time, I was blogging back then. I called it the coolest thing in any category of thing I had ever seen at an E3 show. I mean, stereoscopic 3D without glasses, come on, that's world changing. And so, I kind of wanted a Nintendo geek too. So I kind of wanted to do a 3DS game. But, we didn't have any internal expertise, and we were certainly very busy at Junction Point. So how do we go about doing that? What we had was a best-selling game. I mean, the first Disney Epic Mickey game was, and remains actually, the best-selling single-platform game in Disney's history. Which I'm quite proud of, that's needless to say. And we were working at Junction Point on what is a highly anticipated sequel across multiple platforms, on the PS3, 360, the Wii, of course, the PC, the Mac, the Wii U. We're going to be everywhere with the sequel game. But what about the 3DS? I love this little thing. I mean, I do so much of my gaming on 3DS, it's not even funny. So we had this fiction and these characters and these game mechanics and this world, but we had no pitch and no team. We needed to find the right partner. And so, some of the producers out in Glendale who were working with us, and we talked to a bunch of developers, people who specialized in handheld development. And there was one day we talked to the folks from DreamRift, right here actually in Florida. They had a great idea. Now, Peter on, who we'll talk to in a minute, he came out and did a pitch for us. And without even knowing what he was actually pitching for, he came with this deck. You're not going to see the whole deck. You can talk to him about the details if you want. And he can reveal whatever he wants about that. But he came in saying, we have an idea we've been working on for a project where you draw things on the bottom screen of a 3DS, and they appear on the top screen. Oh, look at that line. A world of adventure unfolds as you draw it into reality. And he showed images like this, where you're drawing things on the bottom, they appear on the top. But we don't know about the fiction. And so I said, I might be able to help you. So it seemed kind of like a match made in heaven. We had a world, characters, drawing mechanics, and racing mechanics. They had an idea and a passion to do a game pretty close to that. So working together pretty much was a no-brainer. There were some other things that made it a no-brainer, which I'm sure we'll talk about more later today. So together, the DreamRift team and the folks at Disney and Junction Point, we worked together to come up with a game that, for me at least, has some pretty cool foundation elements. Paint and thinner to change the world around you. That top and bottom screen interaction. I mean, one of the things that really appealed to me about DreamRift as a partner was if you look at the work they've done on games like Henry Hansworth and Monster Tale, they're kind of the masters of top and bottom screen interaction. I love that about their games. Really want to make sure we capture that in any Disney Epic Mickey game we did. They totally bought into the idea of rescuing two characters, and Peter and I bonded over our love of games that have customizable fortresses, which I'm sure we'll talk about more as the day goes on, because I can't not talk about it. But I wanted to do the sort of fortress building game every project I've done for the last, oh, I don't know, 15 years. And it's been the first thing I've had to cut. And I'll never forget it. Peter said, this time we're not going to cut. And this time we didn't cut. So I'm really happy about that. And then I had one of those head slapping, what was I not thinking moments, where Peter said, how about we do video game history in Wasteland? It's like, and I just went, oh my gosh, I'm the guy who makes video games. I created a world called Wasteland, so forgotten and rejected Disney history, and it never occurred to me to include video game history in Wasteland. Like, duh. I'll let him tell you about his affection for some specific Disney games, but needless to say, I just went, oh yeah, I was planning to do that. But we're doing that. And then we wanted to honor a classic. Again, I wish I could take any credit for this, but the DreamRift guys came up with this. And it took me about 2 seconds to read this one too. I'm sure most of you can recognize this, but well, we'll see. So we're doing a tribute to Castle of Illusion, a tribute to 16-bit graphics. Everybody's going retro now with 8-bit graphics. I couldn't wait, as a developer, as a player, I couldn't wait to get out of the 8-bit era. But the 16-bit times, those were good times. So that's where we're going. Over to Peter to tell you about how we're doing.
Thanks, Mark. So I'm Peter Rahn. I directed Mickey Tower of Illusion. And yeah, you just got to look back at the original game's intro. And one of the things that was really important to us with this game is to make sure that we do honor to the amazing caliber of work that went into the original game, as well as remaining faithful to the amazing caliber of work that's gone into a multitude of various Disney classics throughout Disney's history. So here with the first film that presents the introduction story to our game, you can see that we're starting with the classic Once Upon a Mouse that you just saw in the intro to the original game. And our story moves along with Mickey first in the cartoon world, just watching TV in his living room, and it's the same house that you might recognize from the other Epic Mickey video games that Mickey lives in. But Oswald doesn't have very good news for Mickey. He actually lets Mickey know that mysteriously the Castle of Illusion has appeared in Wasteland as a forgotten object, and within it Minnie has also been sighted. So Mickey goes off and rushes away from it, but along the way makes a quick pit stop in the wizard Jensen's lab, where he picks up the fabled brush that allows him to use the power of paint thinner in order to create and erase things in his environment. Now we have Mickey arriving in Wasteland for the first time in his quest to save Minnie from the clutches of Mizrabel. Here he meets a familiar friend, Oswald, at the gates of the castle, and they quickly venture inside in order to search for Minnie. Within the castle, one of the first characters that Mickey meets is Jiminy Cricket himself, an old and familiar friend from the classic Pinocchio. And Jiminy jumps in Mickey's pocket and acts as his sort of guide throughout his whole quest. Now within the castle, the villain that you'll be facing this time around is the same villain from the original classic Sega Genesis game, the witch Mizrabel. And she's able to take on the forms of many different Disney villains by merit of her power over illusion. And one of her favorite forms in this game is that of the witch Maleficent from the classic Sleeping Beauty. Now within the castle, Mickey will travel through many vast and varied different wings and halls, and each one kind of has its own theme that draws upon a famous classic Disney movie. Now in the first wing of the castle, we base the levels primarily on the film Peter Pan. And so you can see here our first look at the castle sort of becoming enshrouded in illusion. So on the left side, you can see that the castle is mostly there, but then it quickly becomes shrouded by images from Neverland and Captain Hook ship, the Jolly Roger. And here's another quick look at another environment that will be featured in the game, which is the universe of Alice in Wonderland. Now moving on, as Warren mentioned, one of the things that DreamRift really likes to explore when it comes to the types of games that we make is the idea of what can be done on the top and bottom screen to create a sort of different experience than you typically would see on the hardware platform. And this time around the story is no different, but what we wanted to do with the idea of paint thinner was give the user the ability to use the bottom touch screen to select objects that they can either paint or thin in order to create and erase things on the fly within Mickey's traditional platforming environment on the top screen. Another big feature of the game is the idea of the fortress. Now the fortress is sort of a sub-mode within the game that broadens the idea of a traditional platforming game structure. Within the normal platforming game levels, the player is able to explore levels and oftentimes find optionally rescuable characters. And this cast of characters is huge, and it spans basically every era of Disney from the early classic Disney period on through the Renaissance period and up through modern Disney. We have characters, even as modern as Rapunzel from Tangled. So here's our view of one of the first characters that you can rescue in the game, it's Scrooge McDuck. And you'll notice that at first, when he gets into the fortress, his route is kind of barren and nondescript. But the idea of the fortress is that when you interact with characters within the fortress, you can perform various quests for them, and in return, they'll give you rewards that help you back in your platforming level quests. But as you perform quests with and interact with these characters, their routes will begin to change and evolve. And they'll actually progress further and further to where at the end, once you fully upgraded that character's room, it'll be a fully realized version of a famous scene from that character's universe. And here we have Scrooge's office fully decked out finally. Here's another shot of another famous character that you can pick up along the way. And once again, I should emphasize that this is just going to be a very small sampling of the multitude of characters that you can find in the game. But this is similar from The Lion King, as most of you probably know. And here we have Peter Pan, who is rescued in the first world, given that that's based on Peter Pan. And we can see in the background that it's the beginnings of what eventually will transform, if the player so chooses, to evolve it completely into a fully realized version of the Lost Boys hideout. And here's a final look at one of the characters, which is Goofy with his house. Okay, so the last time that we really came out there and showed a lot of the game was back at E3. And let's take a quick look at where we're at that time. Okay, so that trailer from E3 actually shows a lot of the content that we've implemented for the very first part of the game, which we call the first wing of the Castle Evolution. Now, what we're excited to present you for the first time today is what takes place in the second wing of the game within the castle. And that's basically the idea that the levels in the second part of the game are based on the film Aladdin. So with this wing of the castle, it was really important for us, as it is with every wing of the castle, to make sure that the visuals that we created in the game were as faithful as possible and as directly translated from the classic Disney film that we're drawing from as we can muster. And as a result, one of the things that we were really happy about with working directly with Disney was that we actually got their feature animation department to give us actual source working file images from the original movies So with this scene here, you can see the end result of having gotten, for instance, the original working files that were used to make the final battle scene in the movie Aladdin, where Aladdin confronts Jafar in snake form. Now here are some actual screenshots of one of the first levels that's in this Aladdin wing of the castle, and it's Aladdin parading through the famous Agrabah streets. On the bottom left side here, you can see that there's an object that can be painted in, and it's a sort of mysterious, or maybe not so mysterious outline at first, that the player can select to paint in. And on the upper right, you can see the result of having performed that action with the manifestation of the character Aladdin, who will then go ahead and aid Mickey actively within his quest. And here are just some more quick screens of further levels within the Aladdin area. Here we have the Cave of Wonders. And further down into the Cave of Wonders, where in the movie, Aladdin eventually finds many treasures, including the lamp that contains Genie. Actually, backing up, you'll notice on the upper right side of the bottom screen, there's a mysterious sort of icon. And that's pretty important because it not only ties into something that was featured in the other Epic Mickey games, the idea of sketches, but it's really cool in this game because it gives the player the ability to paint in an object anytime that they want, regardless of whether it's placed in the level or not. So these are sketches that you can take with you into a level, and you can put them anywhere that you want in order to deal with challenges on the fly. So for instance, if you were to tap on that icon of the sorcerer's hat from the movie Fantasia, you'd be presented with the opportunity to paint in Mickey in his famous sorcerer's apprentice garb. And as an end result, based on how well you painted Mickey, he would become invincible for a certain amount of time. And that wraps up the presentation. There's really not much more to say, and I'd rather just let the game speak for itself and how you lose on it.